All right, today we're going to talk a little bit about a couple things, just a couple theoretical concepts that I want you to understand in a very basic term. These advanced theory things we're talking about may not seem real advanced all the time, but we're addressing some advanced concepts in a very simple way so that when you hear about them, that for now, that you got a basic comprehension of what's happening. The first one we want to talk about is articulations. Articulations. That's very simple. To give a very simple example of that is you have a bass player, and he's just plunking along with his fingers, and he's just playing the bass, and all of a sudden he starts using his thumb to whack on the string, while he's hitting a couple notes, and you get this whack kind of sound, like slap bass kind of sound. That's a real simple concept. He used an articulation to voice the basic notes that he was trying to play, to make them sound differently, to sound the notes differently with a different type of articulation. And it's that simple. There's multitudes of them. And in composition and in theory, there's lots of them. I mean, staccato. I mean, there is just tons of them. And with different types of instruments, there can be different types of articulations. The way that, even like with a saxophone or a cello or any instrument, the way that they're voicing it, or the way they bow it, the way they, there's lots of different ways. It's just basically the articulation is a different way to voice the sound. Like you're trying to hit the B note that's written on the piece of music or that you hear, or a B chord, and they're sounding it differently. They're voicing the sound differently so that they're using some type of articulation to voice that sound and make it sound different. And it's that simple. Keep that concept very simple in your head. So for now, at least, when somebody says an articulation, you have a basic concept of what that is. It's just that they've taken that basic note and or you got a guitar string, and instead of just picking it in some certain way, that they've used some type of other articulation to voice that sound to make it sound a little bit differently. And it's that simple. Try to keep that basic simple concept in your head that simple for now. There's lots of different articulations. Even a slide. If you put your finger on a guitar string or bass string on the A string and hit that note and then slide it up to the B, that's a type of articulation. He's sounding that note differently. He's causing some other type of articulation and way of sounding that note or that progression of notes or chords that he's producing from the written music. And it's that simple. Try to keep it that simple in your head so that later on, as we get into some more advanced theory and we start really getting into some of these concepts, that for now you already have a basic concept of what we're trying to get at. And it's that simple. The other thing is dynamics. Dynamics are a huge thing, and dynamics can get very complicated. Do not feel like you're an idiot if you look at a piece of sheet music and you can't understand what PPFFF is and how exactly you would voice that, because that can be very complicated as far as your experience with the music, your experience with, composers, with all kinds of things. That those simple concepts can look very simple. P for soft, F for loud, and those are dynamics. Playing it louder or softer during the composition changes the dynamics to where a part of the composition is playing loud or soft, or you're doing something trying to build up that's rising or falling in volume dynamics. Those are very simple dynamic concepts, and don't get lost in there. I know people that have been playing music a long time, and they get together what PPP might mean to somebody and exactly what volume that means as in comparison to what PP volume means can vary depending on their experience with composers in that type of setting, or dealing with music itself and being very familiar with what decibel level that they'd be talking about. It's like, well, this decibel would be P, he's talking about, just for instance, let's say they're talking about this decibel level. Well, Bob doesn't know that, so he's playing it up here or down here. That can be a very complicated issue. Just understand the basic concept of what they're talking about when they're talking about dynamics, so that you understand they're getting louder or softer, they're doing some kind of rise or fall or something like that, that those are all dynamic things. Any change in volume or, and things like that. And that can work with articulations. Articulations, like we were talking about, that slap bass technique, is obviously going to get louder there, right? If you're just thumbing along on your bass, all of a sudden you start slapping the heck out of your bass, there's a good chance that, you're dealing with dynamics also. So those two things can work together. But just understand the basic concept of what we're talking about, so that later on, as we start getting into it, or for now somebody asks you, that you got a basic concept of what they're trying to relate to you, so that you can, have that concept as basic as possible for now in your head. And the other things we want to talk about is things like, things that, breaks and stops and pauses and things like that are compositional tools. We're not going to get into that much, but I mean, those are huge things that, you're talking about a piece of music and all of a sudden there is no music, or it's paused, and that can be a huge tools, and so those are other tools that work with the things that we're talking about now, and other compositional tools, obviously. So understand those are tools that you can pull out of your hat. We're going to talk about a bunch of them. But I basically want to address those so that you understand the basic concept, so that when we start talking about those things later, that you already have the basic concept of what's happening and what that means. Or if somebody says something to you about articulations or dynamics, stops and pauses and breaks and things like that, that you understand, you have the basic concept of what they're trying to relate to you. So I hope that helped, and I hope you have a basic understanding of that, and you can get on the internet and research that as much as you want, or you can wait until we get there in this series. But for now, you understand the basic concept. So peace, help, love. Hope you enjoyed the video. See you in the next one.